Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is James Blaine. I'm the College Programs Coordinator for Porter College. Welcome to our Porter College Family Orientation for our incoming sophomore second year students. This evening, the Zoom program will be recorded and then posted on Porter College's YouTube channel, as well as on our Porter College homepage, so you'll be able to reference back to it if you'd like. Let's begin this evening with our land acknowledgement. The land on which UC Santa Cruz is located is the unceded territory of the Awaswas-speaking UP tribe. The Amamutsan tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during the Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. The agenda for this evening will be a presentation about our college housing, followed by a short presentation on college student life and activities with a short Q&A, and then really opening it up to a general Q&A. Our panelists this evening are Kathy Cooney, Associate Director for College and Student Life for Porter and Kresge Colleges, Michael Yamauchi Gleason, Senior Director for College and Student Life for Porter and Kresge Colleges, as well as Rachel Carson and Oaks College, Althea Pearl Carlson, Assistant College Programs Coordinator here at Porter College, and myself, James Blaine. And we'll just go ahead and start with the college housing presentation. Mike and Kathy, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thanks, James. Once again, I'm Mike Yamauchi Gleason, Senior Director of College Student Life at Porter Kresge. And as James said, I also just added recently Rachel Carson and Oaks College. Welcome. We're glad you're here. We're glad we can spend some time with you. Hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions that you may have. Part of my role as Senior Director is to really oversee all the student life functions of the college. And I work very closely with the academic side of the house. And a lot of your students, since this is their second year, have already had a pretty good introduction to the academic advisors. And so that they've got an understanding of what their role is. But they'll also have plenty of time once they're here on campus to meet with their academic advisor. We have approximately, I don't know, about between Porter and Kresge, about 2,000 students that our staff oversees. And we have a number of staff that are here to support your student. Myself, Kathy Cooney, Associate Director, College Student Life. But then we also have an Assistant Director of Residential Education. We have coordinators of residential education. These are all professional staff. The ADRE and the CRE are actually live-in staff. And so they're there on site with the students. We have RAs, residential assistants, and we have resident assistants, and depending on the floor section, it can be between a 1:35 ratio or 1:45 ratio, around that. And we also have James' office with Althea, the programs office, and they have orientation leaders as well. And so we have a lot of staff that's available to help support your student. In addition to our residential and student life staff, we also have our community safety officers, CSO programs. And these are folks, they work from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. every night, 7 days a week. And their main role is just to do rounds through the campus, the college, and for any health and safety issues. So they help out our students, and they also help enforce our rules and regulations that we have and as far as our expectations for our students. We also have our own police department here on campus. We have a fire department on campus. And so there's a lot of after hours resources that our students can tap into to get the support that they need. We also have a very strong counseling program here on campus, and then we have a 24/7 support mechanism for students to access counseling as needed. And there's a lot of other offices on campus that students use to get resources. And one of the things that your student will get once they're here, particularly during Welcome Week, is a lot of information about all the resources available to them. And so the RAs will spend a lot of time talking to them about what resources there, how to access it, and to really get a good feel for being on campus. Because I know being off campus and doing everything remote last year was really strange. And so now they're going to have an opportunity to be here with us, and we're so glad that they are. One of the things that we spend a lot of time with our students is really helping strengthen their ability to advocate for themselves. Some students will come to us already pretty good at that, but some not so much. And so it's really important for them to really reach out for the resources they have. Excuse me, as I said, we have a lot of people on the ground and we know a lot that's happening, but we don't know everything. So if you get the phone call, and you will get the phone call from your son or daughter, that they may have a problem they don't know how to resolve or who to go to. One of the things that I would ask you to do is, and I'm a parent and I have a recent college graduate, and so I went through this as well. I always wanted to go to problem solving mode right away. And so what I would suggest that you do, instead of going to that point right away, is just ask some questions. You know, have you talked to your academic advisor? Have you talked to your faculty member? Have you talked to your teaching assistant? Have you talked to your RA? And see if they're using their resources. And if they don't know what resources to use, their RA is a really good connection, because most of our RAs are sophomores or juniors with a few seniors. They've lived the experience that your son or daughter is going to live here on campus. I've been in higher education for 40 years. I've been here on campus for 20. And I know a lot about life at the college, and I know a lot about universities. But I haven't been an 18-year-old for a really long time. And so I haven't had that experience that they're now having. So the RA is a really good resource for them. I still remember my first RA, Bruce Gibbons. And I still stay connected with him because he had that kind of an impact. And he was that great of a resource for me as I was trying to find myself and trying to navigate the college that I went to. So it's really important for students to get engaged. And that's a lot of that engagement can happen in the residential life side, but it also happens in the student life side. And Althea and James will talk more about that a little bit later. But there's a lot of opportunities for your son or daughter to get connected to student organizations across campus. We have a program, Cornucopia. I believe the second year students are on Monday, and they'll have a welcome week, and they'll have a chance to see a lot of the student organization representatives across campus. And so there's really an opportunity for them to get engaged right away. And so that's a really important thing that we encourage you to encourage your son or daughter to be a part of. I know there's lots and lots of questions about the pandemic and COVID-19 and how do we support our students and staying healthy and keeping our environment safe. There is more information that's going to be released. We've been a little slow in getting information out that you probably want, just because things are changing daily. But one of the things that is expected, that all our students, faculty, and staff are expected to be vaccinated. Our goal is to have a 90% vaccination rate or higher. We have some early arrival students, and at this point, I was talking to the person who staffs the testing site for us, and he said that over 90% of the early arrivals have already been vaccinated. So we're reaching our goal, and even the incoming students, the new students that are coming in a little bit later this month, it's about an 82% vaccination rate. And what we think is a lot of those folks that aren't counted for yet have been vaccinated, but they just haven't put in their health center records that they've been vaccinated. And they have till September 9th to do that. So if you're not sure if your student has done that yet, ask them, because September 9th is our deadline to try to get a good understanding of how many people are vaccinated. We do have testing on campus. We have a lab on campus, so test results happen pretty quickly. I was part of a testing committee, and I love being a part of that committee because all the scientists were a part of it, all the people that run our lab. And these are world-renowned scientists. And they have been guiding us on how to keep our campus safe and keep people tested. And so there will be testing that'll happen. That one of the reasons we're being delayed a little bit is because we're trying to identify who needs to be tested and how often they need to be tested. But that information is coming shortly. There's also, for those who choose not to be vaccinated, there is an exemption process, and that information is coming as well. But if someone does choose to be exempted, they will be asked to be tested on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, and maybe even twice a week, depending on what our health center and the county health department asks us to do. We do have our own quarantine isolation space here on campus. So if a student does test positive, they'll work through the health center here on campus, and they'll get the instructions for what they need to do. We have staff in place to help them get to isolation on campus. And so we are set up to protect our communities. And the one thing that's really critical of all of this is we need our students to follow our expectations. And we had a small group of students with us last year. And for the most part, they were really good about being mindful of testing and also being mindful of any rules around COVID, such as wearing masks when you're inside, social distancing and things like that. And so all those rules and expectations will be explained through an email that's coming out shortly, and also when they arrive here on campus. And so there really is a lot of information out there, but I'm pretty confident that we'll do the best that we can. And as long as the students cooperate with what our expectations are, I think we're gonna have a pretty safe environment. And so that hopefully that answers some of your questions. As I said, it's still in flux in terms of the final, because we just received another guideline from the Office of the President 2 days ago, which changed a little bit of the things we're going to do. But we are working on it. Before I turn it over to Kathy to talk more about housing, one of the things I think is really important, as you may know, we are limited on the kind of information we can give you because of national and state guidelines. And so we won't be able to give you specific information about your son or daughter unless we have permission from them to do that. But that doesn't mean you can't call us if you have a question or concern or you want us to be aware of something. So please feel free to call our staff. Kathy and I definitely respond to messages. Our information is on our website, so please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or concerns. But it also is really good for you to have a conversation with your son or daughter about what information you need from them and how you need to get it. Because that's a really good, because some students are really good about getting information to their family, others not so much. As I mentioned earlier, my son just recently graduated from college a couple of years ago, and he was more on the not side in terms of giving information. And so we had to kind of figure out the best way to get information from him. And we figured it out. We realized that he didn't really want a conversation with us, but he didn't mind a 2 or 3 sentence text every once in a while. And so that worked. One of the things that I also would encourage you to do is just figure out how you're going to stay connected. When I went to college many years ago, I had an agreement with my parents that I would call them every Sunday morning. And I did that for the next 30 years. And that was our way of staying connected. And that's really important. I know some of our students may feel like they're pulling away from you and they really don't want you to be engaged with them as they move on to the next stage of their life. But deep down, they do want you to be involved. They may want you to be involved on their terms, which may be different than what it's been in the past, but they definitely want you to stay connected. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Kathy and she'll talk more specifically about housing. And once again, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to step out here in a little bit because I also have another college that has a program tonight, so I'm going to be joining them shortly. But once again, thank you for being here.
Kathy, before you start, just everybody, I see some of you have discovered the Q&A function, but I forgot to mention, if you'd like to ask a question at any point, just go ahead and drop it into the Q&A. That button is at the bottom center, more or less, of your screen, probably on a navigation bar. You can also use the chat, but the Q&A function is probably the best option for us. So with that, Kathy, back to you.
Sure. Thanks, James. The couple things that I want to talk about, there's a number of questions, and I'll come back to some of those around COVID in particular. We'll come back to, but I wanted to talk a little bit about housing, general information about housing, move-in day, and communications. For our sophomores, or our rising sophomores, as we've been calling our folks, their move-in day for them are September 19th, which is a Sunday. And if they would like to avoid lines and traffic and the chaos of what will be move-in, which is part of the experience, they're also welcome to move in on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday before classes start. Your students have already received some information from us. They would have received information about their room assignments. So they've already had access to see what room they're assigned in, who their roommates are, and to be able to begin that communication. We've just recently sent out another email to students today about signing up for their move-in appointment time. And we apologize, we've had some technical glitches with our Google Calendar, and so it became a little more confusing today with those signups, but we think we've got those things figured out and have been able to monitor that. We think students are being able to sign up for their appointments, so our apologies on that. But move-in day is going to be really exciting. Your student will get more specific information, I believe, the week of September 6th, as to what they will need to do. But briefly, you're going to arrive to campus and you're going to stage in what's called lot 126, which is across from Porter College. And while they're going to take care of ensuring that they have uploaded their vaccination information and that they are set in COVID compliance for check-in. And then they're going to get their keys to their room. For students that are living in the residence halls, those will be in the form of their student ID, it's card access. And for those living in apartments, they'll have brass keys and also will receive their student ID if they haven't already received one. From there, we will have folks come up to Porter College and they'll be able to unload their belongings. As typical with all of our move-in days, there's 30 minutes to unload belongings into their room or apartment. But due to COVID, we still have some restrictions. And one of those restrictions is that we're asking folks to leave shortly after the vehicles are unloaded. And that's just part of our mitigation plan for COVID by the university. The other piece is that we're asking folks to limit the number of people that come with the student to assist them in moving in. More details will come into an email that should be received shortly. We appreciate your patience. Things with COVID, as you know, have been changing all the time. And with that also comes our planning for the fall and how we're going to work to keep our campus and our students safe and to mitigate COVID and the new variant. So we appreciate your patience and understanding as that information may change from one email to the next, but we try to bring clarity. One thing that is important for the students to do if they haven't already is to upload their vaccination information to the Healthy Messenger. The students are able to receive their communications from us either via email or through their housing portal on their student portal. If they're concerned that they're not receiving information from us, we encourage them to check their spam box. That sometimes it's filtering into spam, but we are communicating with your students, and we're also encouraging them to share this information with you because we know that you are guiding them through this process as well, and maybe the person that can help sort out a lot of the information that's coming out as they're preparing. We know that it's very exciting for them. They had some real trying years these past couple of years, and we're really glad that we were able to prioritize our rising sophomore class to be a part of housing. One of the questions that came is that I want to just answer is about sophomores being here at the same time as first year students and what experience will be different for them. One of the things I liken this to is almost like our transfer students who have academic experience by being in the classroom a year already, but first time to campus. And so, the sophomores will, they will have activities very similar to first-year students, but we're also going to know that they're going to probably want to participate in a lot of things that maybe sophomores wouldn't have wanted in the past, like campus tours, or a lot of the programs and activities the RAs have planned, because they're wanting to have that first-year experience that they didn't get last year. So we're really excited to be able to engage them in programming, to ask them what they want for the programs that they'd like to experience. And the RAs and James and Althea's office will work closely to try and provide those experiences.
Kathy,
Yes.
along those lines, I just wanted to point out, you'd mentioned that some of our second year students may choose to move in after Sunday.
Yes.
And since we're talking about that first year experience on housing, if your student is living in housing, although you may not move in on Sunday, we are at this time planning to have a housing orientation for the new students who are living on campus, so that they get to know what the rules of the house are, what is permitted, what is not permitted. A quick thumbnail of that is, if you can't do it in your house, you can't do it here. But of course, there are other rules that we have to deal with as a state institution. So if you choose not to move in on the Sunday, we will be doing that as a Zoom program, and it will be posted on our Porter College calendar, and we will probably do an email or something to all of the residential second year students, just so it's on their note to log in and join us for that orientation on Sunday night.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And just the big picture of, Mike had mentioned, we have about 2,000 students that live with us. Our first year students will be moving in on the 16th and 17th. And then our transfer students will move in on the 18th. And then on the 19th is our continuing students, our rising sophomores and continuing students. We tend to get a lot of questions of what's in the room, what to bring, what's the dining like. So I just want to cover a few of those, and then really, please, feel free to ask your questions, and we'll try and spend some time answering those in the chat. But your students' room will have all the furniture that they need. There's a desk, there's a bed, there's a wardrobe with either drawers in the wardrobe or a second set of drawers. The beds are extra long twin. So if you're purchasing sheets and such, you want to purchase for an extra long twin. The rooms are carpeted. The students are able to bring a refrigerator if they'd like, or a microwave. Some students might bring tea kettles or coffee pots and rice cookers. Anything that is a small appliance, we just ask that it not have an open element, but we want students to feel comfortable and to make their space their home. Students have already received their information on how to contact their roommates, so we strongly encourage that folks reach out to each other and talk about what they are interested in bringing or willing to share. So maybe one person's bringing the microwave, the other person wants to bring the fridge, just so that they don't show up with 3 microwaves or 3 fridges in the space. There are also shades or curtains, depending on where the student is living, so they don't need to provide any window treatments. We ask that students not bring outside furniture, because there really isn't space in the room for additional furniture, and all the furniture that is provided needs to stay in the room. We had a session last night with first year students, and one of the questions came up was about TVs and Ethernet ports and such, and we don't have Ethernet ports anymore. We've moved to a fully wireless Wi-Fi system here with the university's upgrade. Students are welcome to bring TVs, computers, monitors, etc. We don't have a lounge space that has TVs, so that's something, if a student wants to watch TV or such, that they would want to be able to do that on their own, keep their own TV or monitor or such. When bringing things to campus, I'm a strong promoter of seasonal items. The students will probably overpack. That happens every year. it's just something that people want to bring everything with them. And if they have the ability to pack in seasons of bring what you need for fall, take home when you go home on the weekends, if you do, or if you go back for a winter break, take home what you don't need, bring back. But usually students will overpack, and we just really encourage people to bring just what they need, and you can always ship or maybe bring more later. We get questions about, should I bring a bicycle? And James is an avid bicyclist and can tell you from his perspective what the city of Santa Cruz is like. But if your student is not an avid bicyclist, they might not want to bring a bike at this time. They might want to become more familiar with the topography. We have a lot of bikes that are brought to campus but aren't utilized during the school year because they find out it's much more difficult to ride than they thought. Transportation here in town is, we have a really good public transportation. Your student will be able to get around on campus with the campus shuttles, as well as to get off campus to different stores like grocery stores, or we have Target. The city buses will take them from campus into town. Also, they can get a bus that takes them over the hill to San Jose, which can get them up to the Bay Area and beyond. So public transportation is really very accessible here on campus. Their student ID will serve as their means of transportation. If they also have a meal plan, it'll be their dining hall access. And for students who this is their first time coming to campus and they haven't gotten their ID, excuse me, they will receive that at move-in as long as they have already uploaded their picture to ID services. We know there's a number of students that have not done that yet. So if you wouldn't mind asking your student if they've sent in their photo ID and ask them if they haven't to do that right away, that's helpful for their start of their school year. I'm going to look at some questions. James, do you have anything you'd want to add in from your perspective?
Just a note on bikes, as Kathy said, I commute by bike every day and ride for recreation as well. But if your students don't already ride a bike or don't plan on riding a bike for recreation, it is not simply because of the layout of campus. Getting around campus on a bike is a little bit problematic. It is quite hilly. The roads are not extremely wide. They're wide enough if you're comfortable, but they're also curvy. So what would be a good suggestion is that move-in can be quite hectic in September. So perhaps give them a quarter and decide for winter quarter, if you want a bike, you'll know a little bit more about the terrain and how you feel about it. You'll know what the bus systems are like. And at that time, maybe bring your bike up winter quarter. Also, there is a bike library program through our TAPS, our transportation and parking services. So if it's just something your student wants to experiment with, but you don't want to have the issues of security and initial cost layout for a bicycle, they can look into the bike library and get a loaner here on campus. So that's an opportunity for them as well.
So I'm seeing a couple questions that I just want to answer live here about your student might be assigned to a different housing location. They may have either applied to a different housing location or accepted an alternative offer, to which we appreciate their flexibility. Their housing office, so for example, if the student is living at Crown College, the Crown Housing Office will be sending them their move-in information. The letter is the same content. The only thing that's different is the specific move-in link to sign up for an appointment to move into their space, and then follow those directions as to which lot that you will stage in. But each of the housing offices will be sending out this information to the people residing specifically in their community. We know that many folks did accept an alternative offer to be able to have a space on campus, and we would have loved to have been able to have all of our Porter affiliates be able to live with us at Porter. And the interest in Porter, we're a very popular college for continuing students, and so the interest always exceeds the amount of space that we have. But if your student is still interested in trying to get back to Porter, we ask that they wait a couple weeks into the school year so we can get things settled and know who's here and what spaces might open, and then we can see how we can get them back into the community. They may also find that they love being where they're at and have made a connection because likely they have met and will meet some other Porter affiliates living in other communities as well. But we'll do our best to assist with that. For students who are living in the apartments, we have some things that you would want to know in terms of what to bring. Our apartments have the same room fixtures as what our residence halls do. So the beds, the dressers, the desks, etc. They also have a kitchen table, some end tables for the dining or the living room area, and lounge chairs. We don't have microwaves in our own apartments, so the students would need to bring one, but there is the fridge and the stove and all the appliances. They will want to bring their own cookware, plates, silverware, storage, all of those things, like if they were living off campus themselves. They are also responsible for cleaning their own community. So the RAs will be helpful in helping them create chore wheels and guiding them through that process. But if they're living in the residence halls, they would have custodial services in that common space, but apartments is the responsibility of the students to maintain. Couple other questions that I want to just answer live is for students, if they want to upload a new photo, I think IT services will say, please just go with the photo that you have. They're working really hard to print out last year's class, which the majority of the students didn't receive their IDs because of not being here on campus, and this year's class. So they're working hard to do that, and I don't think they have the ability or the bandwidth right now to reprint pictures. So if they could just continue to use the photo that they uploaded before. Are students able to bring their bikes into the apartment? Yes, they are. They're welcome to store things in their apartment. The only thing is motorized vehicles. We do have sometimes people bring scooters into the apartments. They're not permitted in there. Do they have individual locks in the bedrooms at Porter? Yes, they do have individual locks. The Porter apartments are 6-person apartments. There's 2 doubles or small doubles and 2 singles, and there are 2 bathrooms in each of the apartments. So 6 people share 2 bathrooms, 2 full bathrooms. Althea, anything you would want to share from your perspective of having been on campus?
Gosh, let's see. Sorry, I was a little absorbed in the chat. What specific aspect?
What would you say to a student that's coming, a continuing student? You've worked with our student leaders and not too far removed from when you were a student. What would you say are things that they should look forward to, or advice you would have?
Absolutely. So at least from my experience coming here, my first year, although this was 6 years ago now, times have changed a little bit. I would say try to pack light. I definitely echo Kathy's suggestion about seasonal wear. And if you're coming from Southern California, for instance, it is a little chillier here. At night, we get the cold air coming in from the ocean. So packing some layers is good. And in terms of staying connected to things going on in your community, we have lots of access to calendars and things like that. But specific to living in the dorms, shower shoes are good. Bring some shower shoes. And let's see. Yeah, I'd say just like an open mind and, some flexibility will get you a long way. But yeah, lots of opportunities for fun. Sorry. There's a question about laundry. We do have laundry.
Yes, there's a common laundry room that students have in the apartment area. They will access it by either a credit card or a declining balance card, debit card. No coins are needed. We do ask that students use liquid soap. I know it seems very trivial, but it's so critically important. The Tide Pods are not the best use for those machines. And there's multiple washers and multiple dryers for students to use. And the apartments surround the laundry room, so it's very, very easy to get to it. Well, I'm going to pause there, James and Althea, and let you go ahead and introduce a lot of the stuff from your office and the programs side of our college, and I'll type some responses to some of the questions here.
Sounds like a plan.
Can't hear you, James.
Yeah, sorry, James, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I keep turning my microphone off. My name's James Blaine. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the college programs coordinator here at Porter College. My background is I was raised by a family of educators. In fact, my father has just retired from the high school board in Spotsylvania, Virginia, only 2.5 years ago. So he has been an educator all his life. My mother is also an educator. I got my BA from the University of California at Irvine in dance, and then came up to UCLA, and I was at UCLA for 20 years, and then have come up here. And one of the joys I find at UC Santa Cruz is I'm able to really combine that desire for learning and education that was sort of bred into me through my family, as well as the opportunity to be creative and expressive that I received as in my education as a dance major. And the other really wonderful thing is that I get to work with Althea, who is, well, I will let you tell, I'll let Althea tell about themselves.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. It's really nice to be with you here, all of you here tonight for this Q&A session. My name is Althea Pearl Carlson. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, programs. That's just the work we're in. They, them, theirs pronouns, and I'm the assistant college programs coordinator here at Porter College with James Blaine. Some background about me. I also come from educators. My mother was an educator, and come from some artists. So I grew up doing lots of theater and events work, which is how I landed here at Porter. And I was a student here actually at Porter College. I graduated last few years with my bachelor's in feminist studies and a minor in education. So education and community building and getting involved with student life is very important to me, and I'm really excited to share these experiences with your students. And let's see what else. Yeah, so enough about me. We'll move into the Q&A.
Well, let me tell you, we're going to be having, there are a lot of programs that we're looking forward to doing with your students. One of the things that you might want to consider as you're considering move-in dates, whether you want to move in on Sunday or a little bit later, a lot of community building and putting down of roots happens before classes start, when everybody's sort of in that same boat. So if you're thinking, it's more convenient to come in Wednesday right before class, or maybe Sunday, we're not sure, opt for the earlier date. It will help your student establish themselves, make friends right from the get-go, and not be the sort of the last one to the party, if you will. In terms of some of the programs that we'll be doing, one of the guiding principles that we have in our office is to try and give students, and pardon me if I say this, but try and give students the opportunity to fail. I know that for myself, I have learned so much more from those things I took on and tried and didn't necessarily succeed with the way I thought I would. We all look for success, but sometimes we learn those really important lessons from what didn't quite go as well as we wanted. And our goal is to give students the opportunity to try something new and take a little bit of a risk, but not risk so much that they're put behind or lose out. So we want to give them the opportunity to really try something when there's this safety net around them. So we're going to be doing a lot of that sort of thing, opportunities for students to get out and just sort of sit down and chat and speak to somebody from a different country, a different state, different backgrounds, and then discover that they may have the same interests and what their commonalities are and how enriched they can be coming from different backgrounds. So we're looking forward to a lot of different programs. Some of them are just going to be very light and fun. Some are going to be a little bit more serious. And we're looking forward to engaging your students with as many things as possible in as many different ways as we can. So questions, I guess, would be a good place to go if there are any for programs.
Yes, we do have a few. And just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what our office does and how our office will be immediately connected with your students this fall, I just want to explain our connection to the orientation leaders really quick and how we're connected to Welcome Week. And then we're going to get to some of your questions about Welcome Week because I've been seeing them come up in the chat and we're going to be addressing them here. So essentially, James and I have a staff of orientation leaders and program assistants, and they help us essentially get your students oriented to campus, to student life, but really they help facilitate connections between students through hosting programs or hosting events or activities for your new students to get connected with other students. Some of these things might look like button making programs or creative activities where they can get together and hang out and do some things together. Others might look like tours around campus or around town so that they get oriented. And also, you know, we have a lot of eclectic, exciting things planned to kind of meet the interests and needs of lots of different students. And also just so that we can learn lots of new things. So just kind of so we have an understanding on that, Welcome Week will be the week of move-in. These programs are designed to help your students get involved with other students. Like James said, you know, plant their roots and really, you know, hit the ground running in terms of having an opportunity to get connected and build their community at college as they're kind of launching into this new space. So those programs, they're not technically mandatory, but that said, we encourage your students to go to them at all times. And they're lots of fun and there'll be opportunities for the whole quarter. So we're gonna go into some of the questions in the chat and in the Q&A. And then the questions that we haven't addressed in our activities session, we're gonna continue to address when James and I finished our presentation. So just so you know, we are gonna get to them. All right, so a question. We haven't heard the details of Welcome Week yet. Can you please share the dates and details we need to know about these events?
For our second year students, as I think Mike or Kathy have already said, we don't really have, other than our housing orientation Sunday night, we don't really have required programming for them because as second year students, a lot of that is the mandatory things tend to be academic in nature, their core course orientation, their academic orientations. Most of your students have already met with, we hope, their advisors, albeit online. They're getting to know their major advisors or settling in on their majors and things like this. So as for the second year students, we don't have as many mandatory programs because we want to really facilitate them getting to know their community. As I said, putting down roots, getting to know their neighbors. In many cases, it's going to be getting to know themselves as standalone human beings. Again, no offense meant to the families, but so many of us grow up and while we're at home, we have one way of behaving, and as we leave home, we sort of spread our wings a little bit and just find out what it is, what my freedoms are and how I can act responsibly and so on. So those are the type of programs that we'll be doing. They'll be starting on Sunday with opportunities for them to get out and meet. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we'll have different sorts of programs. So again, it's not mandatory programming for our second year students, but these are really programs for them to really begin spreading their wings, putting down roots, finding out who they are and how they relate independent of family in this new environment, in their new community. One aspect that is also very important in terms of some of the orientations that we will be doing. It was pointed out to me a couple of hours ago, in fact, that this year, unlike most, we don't have one class of first-year students and one class of transfers who've never been here. We really almost have 4 classes of students who have never spent a lot of time on campus. So one of the really important things that we need to do is make sure that all of our first-year students on campus know how to get around campus, know how to make connections, and start making those connections and finding ways to become involved on campus in the community. Because statistically, I think you'll find that the student who is involved with their community and their, whether it be their academic department, whether it be a job on campus, whether it be a club on campus, is going to be academically more successful than the student who just does one single thing. They perhaps focus on class and then are not active socially. So we're really going to be pushing our communities to get involved here at Porter College with different organizations, student organizations on campus that are not necessarily at Porter College, but to make the most of their time and the facilities and opportunities at UCSC.
Thanks, James. And just a question that came up in the chat, but I don't know if it was public. I just want to make sure we address it publicly. Was just to see if our Welcome Week activities are extending to sophomores, and we want to confirm they are absolutely extended to sophomores. Our programming is intentionally designed to make sure we're helping sophomores transition into this year, understanding that academically they have a year's worth of experience and a year's worth of experience as a young adult, you know, post high school, but also understanding that when they come to campus, it'll feel a lot like being a frosh in terms of navigating the campus and maybe learning some of the geographical aspects of campus and meeting each other. So we do understand that and want to make sure that we are providing utmost support and opportunities for connection for your students, because this is a unique circumstance.
It's going to be quite a learning experience for us as well. So we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. How do you find time and place for student orientation? Specifically for second years. So
I'm not quite sure what that.
I think so in terms of our like non-mandatory programs and activities, we have a public calendar at our Porter website that is always populated with our programs and activities. So if students are ever looking for something to do, they can always go to that calendar and put some things into their agenda for the school year. On top of that, we are posting on our Instagram, and if your students use Discord, we have a Discord. Those things are available, or that information for those social medias are available on our website, and I can post them in the chat as well in just a bit. So basically, in terms of keeping an eye out for events, our calendar and our social media are great places, and we also if they check their emails, they will also see some events listed in there as well. And often advisors send things along from across the departments of the university.
Admittedly, one of the challenges we're facing right now is, as Mike indicated, and as Kathy's already talked about, in the COVID landscape, things are changing rapidly for us. So we're having to very frequently, we have something all sketched out and we're about to put it on the calendar. And then we may need to call it back because we have to, we were going to do something, we were planning on doing it here in this manner. So something has changed. We can't do it in that location, or we have to scale it back because of capacity issues and social distancing. So the landscape is changing in the programming world as well as the health world. So something we're struggling with.
All right, just one more question, or at least one more question. My student will be living at Crown. Should they attend Crown orientation activities or Porter activities? We would recommend a little bit of both, depending on what your student is interested in. There's a lot of value in your residential community and getting to know the people you're living with. But we also, there's a lot of value in being connected with your affiliated college. And we, of course, at Porter want nothing more than to be connected with your student. So what we would recommend is your student look at the activities that Crown is hosting, look at the activities that Porter will be hosting, and pick and choose which ones are best for them. And just know that that protocol, you could say, for events and activities can continue for the whole year. Your student is welcome at any and all activities. They are college specific just for the purpose of smaller learning living communities so that your student can kind of build community based on certain topics and on certain themes. That said, the whole university is connected. We're a vibrant web net. So there's nothing we want more than to make sure your student can get connected to all parts of campus and all parts of the college system.
The one thing that is college specific, however, and that your students as second year students already, as I've mentioned, have met their advisors, but their college advisors are college specific. So wherever your student is living, whether they be at Porter or at Crown, or even if they're off campus, they will want to really connect with their college advisors here at Porter. I'd also just like to put a plug in case they've not told you. Porter College and all of your students as Porter College affiliates, regardless of where they live, have access to some of the undergraduate funding opportunities offered through Porter College. And those are those opportunities that can be found on the academic homepage and on the Porter College website. So regardless of where they are, those are things that they will want to stay connected to Porter College about, specifically their academic advising and undergraduate funding opportunities for research and things like this. So do we go to the general Q&A?
I'm sorry, I was just scanning for questions real quick. But if we'd like to move into the general Q&A, yeah, we can just continue on. And if we have any questions come up, we'd be happy to answer them. All right. Sorry, just a moment as we go through the Q&A and source a question. All right, and just the timing of Welcome Week, that's a good question. Is that Sunday through Wednesday prior to classes? Does a student have to register ahead of time for any Welcome Week programs? The time frame you listed is correct, and it's actually a little bit, we kind of cast a wide net in terms of our programs, so there will be opportunities also after that time frame as well. We do a lot of we plan more intensive programming the first 6 weeks, as that tends to be a good time for students to get involved in the quarter, given the quarter system. In terms of, do you need to register? No, you do not need to register. They just need to show up, and they'll need to follow the necessary health and safety COVID guidelines. So masking up and when required, the badge system. Are we doing a Welcome Week in February? We are not currently planning to do a Welcome Week in February, but we will have events and activities throughout the whole year and have some specific curriculum in place to make sure that we're, enriching and, leading meaningful events throughout the whole year that pertain to different history months or different seasons, different important events or topics that we want to cover. Okay. Should students plan on going to the bookstore once they get on campus to get their books or materials for classes? Or do they need to order these things and receive them at home before heading to campus? That's a very good question. I'm going to refer you to the Bay Tree Bookstore website. And I might actually recommend you give them a call and see if their shipping might be impacted. If they are having like a slow time, I might recommend choosing course because of that. But we're going to get you connected at least with them. It has changed a little bit in this last year, the Bay Tree Bookstore's policy since before COVID. So I'll pop that in the chat and we'll see if we can get you an answer.
Your students are not necessarily required to purchase their texts there. However, they should make sure that if they're going to order a text online, that they are getting the correct edition and things like this. So they would want to make sure that they've double checked their syllabus before they order texts. But a lot of students now are ordering texts.
And just a personal recommendation on textbooks from my time as a recent student, your student may want to look on, it depends on their learning style and what's best for them. But if they like online, texts, you can find a lot of PDFs online. And there are some cheaper options through sometimes Amazon doing online rentals. But don't tell the bookstore I said that. The bookstore is a really awesome resource, and we'll be posting a link in the chat, which is essentially where you can look for your course listings online at the Bay Tree Bookstore, and that'll help your students see what kind of books might be listed officially by their professor. So that can at least help you plan. But yeah, of course, refer to the syllabus, and that'll be your best bet. And some professors actually have all the courses, the course listings ready to go. And maybe on the first day, you might find out that they have already paid for it and sourced them for you. So that can be good to wait to find out on too. But that's done. That's my little spiel.
Althea, 2 questions I think you and James could answer. One is there a club fair, either virtually and in person? And then also, how do you recommend second years who might be living off campus connect to the college?
Well, the first question, in terms of the club fair, Mike had mentioned that is the cornucopia program that is going to be held. Because of COVID, they're sort of breaking it up this year, but the target day for all of our new sophomores, our incoming second year students, is going to be Monday afternoon at the OPERS facilities on the east side of campus. In terms of students who are living off campus, one of the things we're going to be doing as we're just coming out of this really wacky year is, although we're going to try and do a lot of things in person, we're also going to try and mirror those online. So if your student is local and they're able to come up to campus, we would love to have them here. Hopefully it will work in a time frame that perhaps they have an in-person class and then can come over and join in a program. If they are further afield and perhaps they're still at home and going to be studying remotely this entire quarter, we still want to offer them opportunities to become involved, albeit online, but still join in the community in one way or another. So we will reach out to students, but we cannot, unfortunately, when you're off campus, you don't have the ability just to that serendipity of walking out of the dining hall and, oh, look, here's a drum circle. It takes a little bit more planning, but we will certainly be reaching out and advertising and promoting as much as we can.
I've had a few questions come up about parking and eligibility for parking. So I'm going to drop the transportation and parking services link in the chat. TAPS, as we refer to them, transportation and parking services. They will, this website will provide you all the information you need to know about parking, eligibility for parking, how to get a pass, public transportation, how to get across from Santa Cruz over to San Jose and using other public transportation. So I refer folks to TAPS. And then another question was, if the student is also living off campus, how do I get my student ID? We will have those available at the Porter Kresge Housing Office, which is located at Kresge College J301. That's where our housing office is located, and they'll be able to come and pick it up from us at the housing office.
There's also some information on the ID card services website about procedures. If you don't pick them up by a certain time, how you'll get them and so on. So you might also want to check the ID card services website. And I think, Althea, we have that link we can drop in.
I'll make sure to drop in the ID card services link.
So there's a couple of questions, and I know this is getting a little confusing when you have a Porter student who's living at another community. What do we do? Who do we follow? So I just want to separate if they're living at another community. So let's say, for example, I know we have a number of Porter students that are living over at Crown College and a number of students that are living over at Rachel Carson and Oaks Colleges, those 3 locations in particular. When it comes time to move in information and move in appointments, you're going to follow the email that was the student received from that housing office. So if they're living at Crown, Crown would have sent out the email to your students about their move-in information and the link to their move-in calendar. They offered similar time zones where we're all moving in around the same time, which is 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The number of students arriving at each 15-minute interval may differ from one community to the next, just based on the pure number of people moving in at one time, but move-ins will all take place between 8 and 4 p.m. The housing office in which your student is living will be the one sending out the information about specific move-in, the staging area, and such. When it comes time to the programs and activities, Althea and James and their office are keeping our Porter affiliates up to date on activities that they can get involved in. We want them to stay connected with the college. Your student will have an RA over at the college that they're living with who are going to do amazing programs. All of our colleges are very vibrant and active, and even though we we might have different themes. There's sometimes a lot more artistic people in some of the other colleges at times than what we have at Porter. And sometimes we have more science people and people in STEM fields than some of the other colleges. It's just really a beautiful blend of backgrounds and interests. We've got a couple questions that have come up about meal plans. And if your students living in the residence halls, they had to choose a meal plan option. So they're either picking the 5-day, which is Monday through Friday, or a 7-day, which is all 7 days of the week. They can eat at any dining hall. So they can eat at Porter Kresge. They can go over to Cowell Stevenston. They can go to one of the cafes and use what's called Flexi Dollars or cash on their account. So they have options and opportunities. They're not regulated to only one dining hall. They can go in as often as they want on those days. And they can also eat a late night dinner, which is offered at a number of the dining halls and serves up until 11 p.m. If your student lives in an apartment, they were not required to choose a meal plan. They get to decide if they'd like one or if they'd like to cook. They're welcome to take a meal plan or a voluntary meal plan, as we like to call it. And they can also add Flexi Dollars, which is like cash on their account. Dining Services webpage has great information on that. And Althea, if you have a moment and want to drop me a link, if you can, there's a lot of information about dining costs and options for students who have voluntary meal plans. Do we have outdoor dining areas? Yes, we do. And some of that was expanded over this past year at Porter in particular to be able to accommodate more people and to have outdoor seating as well.
One note about the students who have the option of students in the apartments or perhaps the camper park. If you're thinking about meal plan or not, a lot of socializing happens in the dining halls. Sometimes students will just go in and they'll take their books and they'll be studying there for half the day. So if it's something that you're debating, it might be worthwhile at least getting a 5-day so your student is not excluded from that. Oh, gee, I missed my roommate's birthday party or everybody was singing happy birthday to them and I didn't get to do that because I wasn't in the dining hall. So it does open that opportunity for them. So it is something you might want to think about. You can always add to dining, but you can only reduce your dining at periodic times during the year, and you will be advised, or the students will be advised of that. But it is an opportunity that sometimes, especially for a student, this is their first year on campus. As I said, a lot of socialization happens in the dining halls. And if they're in their apartment and everybody else has a meal plan, they might find themselves eating alone a little bit more than would be ideal for them.
I noticed a question in the chat. If we got the 7-day plan, can we switch to a 5-day without penalty at this point and add Flexi Dollars as needed?
At this point, I think the dining plan is already locked in place for the fall, but they will have an opportunity, like James said, to, if they'd like to reduce, I think there's usually a week in November that's promoted to the students through the campus housing office of when they can reduce their meal plans for the following quarter. They can increase at any time. So at this point, I think we've passed the deadline to make that adjustment. We've got a couple COVID related questions that I just want to touch on in terms of if somebody tests positive, if someone was to test positive or has been exposed to someone who may have COVID, our health center is really the guiding directors of what we should be doing. We do have quarantine and isolation housing that we have held in case students need to quarantine or isolate. And that is at one of our other communities. It's not at Porter. And that's been set aside for students who live on campus. Our health center will direct us to what the best course of action should be for the students, if they should be in quarantine and isolation and how long. And then, of course, we have a program in place to help support them through that by having their meals provided to them and other support. If the student wants to come home, yes, that's absolutely fine. If the student wants to go home and isolate and take care of themselves, there's no concerns with that. The health center has been very proactive throughout this summer and this past school year as we've worked through the pandemic of doing contact tracing and getting in touch with people and really giving good guidance as to what individuals need to do. They've also been very proactive and at times maybe it felt conservative on our approach to mitigation, but we think that we did a great job in this last school year to really minimize the amount of COVID cases that we had, and we really take their guidance to heart. And as James said, it changes, and so some of the information that we're waiting to get has changed since.
Oh, Kathy is frozen.
Well, we'll give Kathy's internet a second to buffer.
Will be so there be a need for them to be in isolation or quarantine. What's that, James?
Oh,
Sorry.
you froze up there for a moment.
Sorry.
Apologies.
That's good.
All right. A quick question, Kathy. I hope I'm not interrupting you, am I?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay, great. So a question coming from SoCal. Althea did mention dressing in layers. Thank you. I'll give that thanks over to Kathy because that was Kathy's point. Are space heaters allowed?
Space heaters are allowed. Again, there might not be a lot of room depending on the size of the space heater. The buildings do get warm. A lot of times students will actually leave their windows open throughout the school year just because they get warm. They do have heat that is that the students control themselves in their specific room with the thermostat. If you do feel the need to get a space heater, it does need to be fire compliant. So it needs to have the auto turn off if it was to tip as fire safety. Otherwise, we wouldn't permit it. For the most part, also, if you're coming from Southern California, if you're coming from anywhere in California, is to know if you're not familiar with Santa Cruz, is we will probably get a hot spell in October sometime for about 2 weeks where we'll get into the 80s and it'll be really warm. But otherwise our temperatures are pretty I would say mellow with just layers.
Awesome. Yeah, I would, in terms of air regulation, I lived in a triple my first year and we'd never used a heater, but we did have a system with 3 fans so we could keep air circulating well. We kept our window open, so a fan might be a nice thing, especially during your first quarter here.
Yeah, the residence halls and the apartments depend on environmental cooling rather. There is no air conditioning, especially if you're coming from Southern California or perhaps the Central Valley. There is no air conditioning.
And then just a quick note to anyone attending, I just want to remind you in the Q&A function, you will be able to see answered questions. So if a question is coming up for you and you might want to check, we might have an answer and a link already posted in the answered. So just another resource for you. Awesome. Got another question in the chat. Can students come home to isolate, or does the university prefer them to stay in quarantine?
That's a really good question. I don't think that the university at this point, from what I'm seeing, has an issue with a student going home to isolate or quarantine if necessary. I think that we will continue to get guidance as to what that might look like. But I have not seen anything come from the campus that says that the student must stay on campus.
The one thing to do is, if your student is going to come home, be sure they talk to their advisors and instructors so that they either don't fall behind. And on the quarter system, things move so quickly. They really don't want to miss out on anything if they can possibly help it. Or plan ahead, and whether that means take a leave of absence if they expect it to be bad or something. But certainly include talking to their advisors and instructors to make arrangements before heading home.
Question again about vaccinations. Will students need to be periodically tested? There is information coming out shortly from the university that will talk more about testing. All of our students on campus, I believe it's now become a UC mandate that within a certain period of time, once students return to campus, will all need to test, which can be done on campus, and there's no charge for that. I think they want a baseline of everybody testing at least once. We will take our directions. The chancellor throughout this past year, and I anticipate it to continue through this year, has sent updates periodically when things have changed for the campus or reminders need to be sent. So we do anticipate more information about the requirements for testing, even though somebody might be vaccinated, to come out shortly.
I noticed a question in the chat. My student will be living off campus this year, but has on-campus classes. Does their student need to be tested regularly for COVID if they are already vaccinated?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for at this moment. I believe that we'll be getting more directions on that in particular. The students may be asked to do what's called a symptom checker, which I believe they will be asked to do for move-in. We as employees need to do that on a daily basis. So they may be required to log and go through a series of questions on a regular basis. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer at this time, but I know we'll get more guidance shortly.
They will need to be participating, register and do the COVID badge thing, which all students are going to have to participate in. If they're, whether they're living on campus or living off campus, if they come to campus, they will have to register and participate in the badge program.
And your student would want to keep an eye out on their email for that information. That's where they would most likely receive any messaging about that. At least at the moment, all testing is available to all students and staff voluntarily. So if your student did have a concern, they could come up and get a test. If the booster shot is recommended by the CDC, will the health center offer that as well?
That's a great question. I think it will depend on it's a good question. I don't know what it'll depend on. I have not seen any information yet about this, but as with everything around flu shots and other vaccinations, the health center does a great job communicating with students about the expectations. They were also very proactive when it came time to vaccinations as to how students could obtain them. And I'm assuming that they will take the lead on communicating that information to students in the campus as well.
Awesome. We have a question. What are the requirements for parents so that they can be on campus during move-in day?
Sure. That's part of the communication that's being developed right now as to what family members and folks who are supporting the students and moving in need to do in particular. So I don't have those details in particular, but the students should be getting that information soon. There are a few things that have just changed that were supposed to go out with the move-in information, and we are on pause on our COVID information to get the most up to date.
Just a word about move-in. I haven't heard any questions about it, but just to drop this in now, when you move your student in, especially let's say this is going to be the Sunday move-in. When you're moving your student in, you will have a very restricted amount of time to get unloaded and get things into the room, because we need to turn the spaces over and move people along. So we really would encourage you, if you want to have that quiet family time before your student launches into this new adventure, do that the night before. The morning of the day of move-in, things can get very hectic. It can be awkward if the desire is we're going to come on campus, get unpacked, and then go out for dinner and come back later on, because there will be programming starting up right away. So we really encourage families to have that quiet time the night before, and then once their student is moved in, parents can then head out to Santa Cruz for a nice quiet time themselves before heading home. So that's something that might it can make things a lot smoother that way.
Great. There's a question. All right. My daughter is an entering sophomore, so her move-in date is 9/19. We're arriving on Santa Cruz on 9/17. Are there any activities for her to do on campus before move-in day? The answer is technically yes, but there's kind of it's a little bit more complicated with the COVID clearance. I guess, Kathy, a question I might ask your opinion on this question. The move-in process with COVID-19 clearance and getting that cleared, that's required before you can do anything on campus. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. So the students will have needed to go through the first part of the move-in process, the check-in, and take care of all the COVID compliance before they would be able to gain access to activities or their keys and such. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Kathy, for that guidance. So in terms of this question, the answer for this would be that we will have some online events and activities your student can participate in while she's in town and while she's preparing. But unfortunately, just with the COVID clearance necessities with public health, we probably won't be able, unless your student was able to get COVID cleared for that event, it would be most likely we wouldn't be able to allow your student in the event until we had the clearance shown, which happens in the first part of your move-in process. All right. And in terms of, let's see, there's a question, how do you do COVID clearance if you aren't living on campus? Let's see, Kathy, do you have any knowledge on this? Sorry.
Yeah, I believe that's the symptom checker that folks will need to do a series of questions where they log into a Qualtrics form. The other piece is that the students would have needed to upload their COVID vaccination information to their eHealth messenger as part of their COVID compliance. So if that hasn't taken place, they wouldn't get COVID clearances. So those things are important.
And the symptom checker is a daily thing. So all of us staff on campus, we complete the daily symptom checker before we come to campus. So.
And I would strongly encourage if, if your student hasn't shared with you when they're getting the emails from the university with all the details, is just to check in with them and to say, hey, have you gotten any emails in particular about, COVID requirements, or, and hopefully they'll share that information with you. It's a lot of information and a lot to work through and to make sure that the details are on order. So, we do hope that they take that time to share that with you so you can assist them in sorting all that information out. And also, if you have questions, that you can reach out for those.
Everybody, we're just reviewing your questions real quick. All right, we have a few questions about early move-in. So will we be able to go, so my daughter is moving in on the 10th because of their job to an on-campus apartment at Porter. Will we be able to go on campus more freely to help with grocery shopping, etc., after moving in the basics during early move-in?
The same expectations are held true for early arrivals as they are for students who are moving on the traditional move-in days. So, in terms of folks, do I get to spend more time, or do I need to leave, campus shortly after unloading? The answer is still yes. So the basic information will still be the same. It's just the date is different. And, we recognize that it's not ideal, and that it can be challenging, but it is something that the campus is asking folks to comply with.
Right. Is the campus fully gated or fenced in? No, it is not. It's a very, very large campus. It is surrounded by the UCSC Natural Reserve, which goes pretty far out into the Santa Cruz Mountains and down into Pogonip, which is another natural reserve area. And at the front of campus, you have to kind of go up a little hill into campus. So almost geographically, because of its position on a hill, it kind of becomes a little bit less accessible. But no, it is not fenced in or gated. There are fences by the farm for our cows. The farm is a fun place to visit. I'm going to plug it real quick because I did stuff with them as a student. So I recommend to your students too, if they're interested, get involved in our farm and garden system. I can drop a link for that as well. And also it can be a fun thing to look at as you're leaving campus if you want to view. Does the university rent refrigerators or microwaves to students? If not, is there an affiliated rental company? So this is part of the Baytree bookstore in the past has offered a rental service. I'm going to post the link in the for that, but you'll need to contact them directly to see kind of what they're able to offer right now. Will students be able to park on move-in day if they have a parking pass or parking permit? I think this is asking if they'll be able to park on campus in general or versus just specifically in the Porter lot. Your student will be able to park on campus. It depends on what kind of parking permit they have. So if they have a remote permit, for instance, they would be able to park in the remote lot that day. But they will get a parking pass. Or Kathy, I have a quick question for the move-in process. Should they expect to get like a paper parking pass? Okay.
No, there isn't a pass per se. The check-in the staging area, the check-in location. So there's 2 of them for the campus when folks arrive, depending on which community you're living in. There may be some information that's handed to them on paper, but it's not like a parking pass or anything in particular, like in the past, Althea. Parking is going to be limited in some locations on move-in day or for the move-in days, because we are using different lots for staging and unloading. So it's really important that students also, if they have a parking pass from the university, that they look at the signage at each lot to make sure that that lot isn't reserved. Again, that TAPS webpage that Althea dropped a link for in the past also has I believe a page dedicated to move-in and what lots are available and what lots are impacted.
Thank you, Kathy. Are the apartment refrigerators larger than the typical mini dorm refrigerators? Yes, they're standard size fridges. So yeah, you can expect a full fridge and a freezer, or not a fridge and freezer, but the top freezer, bottom refrigerator. Alrighty. Any suggestions on how to get your student to share campus information if they're especially if they're reluctant to do so? That is a good question. I guess do either of you want to give it a shot, and I'd be happy to try to give it a stab as well, but I might have a different perspective.
I was going to say, James, you could maybe take it from the parent side, and
it's, you know, about some of it depends on what information it is that you need. We're going to be treating the students as the adults that they are. And that means they're going to have a certain amount of responsibility. And it means that with that responsibility comes the consequences if they choose not to exercise that. If I believe most of their financial information goes to their through their campus accounts, so you need to have some clear understanding with them. If they're paying the bills, then maybe they don't need to share it with you. But if you're paying the bills, you know, you need to have that sort of conversation. What do I, as your parent, have need to get, and what do you as an adult have a responsibility to share because other people depend on it? And what do I actually as a parent have to learn? You know, maybe that's none of my business to ask about. So university is not an educational process just for the student. We as staff persons learn things every day. And I think it's, you know, the university can be a family experience, put it that way.
And I would say there are some things that you as parents or guidance or support folks do have the ability, the students can sign a release for you to be able to have access to. So one of them is is with their housing information is that they can check a box on their housing portal that allows you to have access to the billing information so that you can call the accounts advisor if you have questions about billing or charges related to their housing bills. I think what I've found sometimes is, you know, students are trying to navigate their own independence is not understanding like that your interest is because you care and you want to see them succeed, and they feel like it's more, to put it more, I guess, like you're in their business, and it's not, it's because you care and you want to see the best for them. And I think sometimes for some students, it's just understanding that it's about their success and well-being. If I think what Mike had mentioned that if you have questions, you know, we can sometimes answer things generically, that, you know, we could say, this is how things might be handled, or typically we experience, or answer things in more generic language that might not specifically tell you about your student, but might give you enough information to understand a process, or some of the policies or approaches that we take on campus. Similar to that, though, if your student is experiencing something where they do want you to be involved, and to assist with those conversations, is we will just ask them if they're willing to sign a release of information, allowing us to talk more freely, with you. And some students very much want to do that, and that's something we can do. But there's no blanket release statement or form that they can assign to allow us all to talk as freely. Althea, what's your take?
Sure. I want to just echo James and Kathy, brought up some really great points. And I think those are great paths to go. I would say, I guess, some context for myself, a recent graduate. I started out as frosh in 2015. Wow, so long ago now, and graduated last year. So for myself, it's going to depend on your dynamic with your student. This is kind of can be a big launch, right? It feels kind of like, okay, I'm launching my student into this world. They're kind of going in and kind of starting this new chapter in their life. For myself, I found it really helpful to know I could contact my family if I had questions and needed some support, or to bounce ideas off of them, or to talk to them about a class I was really excited about. But just, and ask for support with help with navigating financial aid processes or business service processes, or vice versa, giving each other support on navigating these things. But for myself, my parents were more hands-off, I guess. So for me, it was helpful just to know I had someone I could talk to and go to. So I would like to, in terms of if you have a specific request or question about your student, definitely feel free. And your student might not, be wanting to talk about it, but you're just a little worried. You can contact an office and ask a general question, and I would say, maybe hold out some faith, but also you've got your own instinct. So, it's a beautiful balance to be strike. Awesome. We've got sorry. So that's the end of my answer, but always, as always, feel free to reach out if you have any specific things that come up. We've got a few questions coming up in the chat.
There's a question that's come up about exemptions from vaccines. There are very limited exceptions that are made, and I think those need to be vetted through the health center. I think some of those can be based on religious or medical circumstances. And so there is a vetting process that happens with the health center. We don't anticipate that there will be many exemptions that will be made. We do anticipate that the majority of our students will be vaccinated, and but the health center is the office that manages those requests.
So Althea, Kathy, we are going past 8, and we obviously want to respect everybody's time. Are there a couple of other higher profile questions or broad questions that could be answered? And then, of course, we can put a card into the onto the recording, so that if people would like follow-up questions, they can just find it there, and we'll have all of the links in the recording as well.
And I'm going to drop a link in the chat for my email, and then also, so myself and James's office email, and then also the housing office email. So if your question did slip through our graphs, please do feel free to email us, and we will really be happy to try to answer your question as soon as possible. Just a heads up, and I'm sure you might know this on your end, but a lot of the offices are receiving lots of requests right now, so you may experience a small delay. All right, so I'll pop our emails in the chat just to start. And Kathy, would you like to look through the open questions and see if there's anything that sticks out to you that you might be able to answer.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just looking here quickly. There's a question about when is rent due? I'm still waiting on financial aid. I don't know those specific dates, but they are posted, I think, on your portal, your student portal as to when things are due. Financial aid, if I understand correctly, tends to get first applied to tuition and fees for the university and then housing after that. What I recommend when students are waiting for their financial aid to come in and the timing of that is not lining up well with when the bills are due, is to reach out to your accounts advisor, and our accounts advisor is Ryan Watt. I'm going to put that in the chat. And Ryan can work with students to navigate when there's a discrepancy of when things are expected to arrive and when things are due. Ryan also can assist with developing payment plans, because we know sometimes things change, and is willing to work with the students. Many a times that we find, though, when things become difficult with finances and paying the bills, sometimes folks will get into the non-communicative state where you want to take care of it, but you're kind of ignoring the outreach from the accounts advisor out of probably, more so fear, and it's important to be in touch with Ryan and to keep in touch and to work out a payment plan and to make those connections, because we really want to build a plan for success. So if your student does receive those emails, and is not to be afraid to reach out and to connect with our accounts advisors or to ask questions. There's been some questions of if there seems to be no appointment times left, what should we do? If there are not appointment times, the college will be probably adding a few more appointment times. The other piece that I have found today in watching ours is we've had a number of people sign up for times, and then they have decided they didn't want that time, and so they canceled that time, but we have to physically go in and hand delete all of those so that we can open those times back up. So it may be also a matter of the college going in and reopening appointments that were previously selected and no longer wanted. So I would say keep watching the calendar for that.
I see a question. Are visitors allowed after move-in day? What is the visitor policy?
That's a great question that I haven't seen as much guidance from the university on at this point. I think we're so focused on trying to be ready for move-in day and, the influx of folks coming to campus and the support that students are going to have on their move-in day, that I haven't seen what the direction will be in terms of visitors or guests to the campus post move-in day. So that's a question that I'll raise, and hopefully we can get that information out. It will definitely be sent to students as to what the parameters or limitations on visitors might be, so that they will know that information. But at this point, I have not seen any communication that has shown specific restrictions. But again, we're waiting for this new communication to come out.
There's a question. Will students be able to move in on the same day they get their on-campus COVID test?
Details about the move-in and the COVID test and the timing of all those will come in this next email communication from the campus.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing a lot of other, there's a couple more questions. I'm just trying to go through some we've already answered, but I'm not seeing a lot more questions coming through.
All right, we can provide a list to the Porter. Okay, can you provide a list to the Porter and Crown sign-up list? If this is for programs and activities sign-up lists, we don't have any official registration going out for Porter College events and activities aside from essentially our where you will essentially, besides our calendar, where you would be able to find information about all of our events. Our events don't require registration unless specified specifically, and those are special cases. We can get you a link to the Crown activities page and the Porter activities page so you can get connected with both of their calendars. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to contact the college programs coordinator at Crown as well. And they are James at Crown. So
Yes,
they'll be able.
my name at Crown is Maya.
We like Maya. So Maya and James work together in the CPC role, and Maya would be able to help you specifically with Crown related programs, but we can get you that in just a second.
Question came up about the Wi-Fi in the apartments. We underwent a large Wi-Fi upgrade here at Porter College over this past year, and it's been working fine. We haven't had any complaints from students since it started. We did have students here for the summer. We still do. They're ready to move to their fall assignment soon, and it seems to be working fine for the students. So we just upgraded. I think all of our residences on campus now have been upgraded. Does Grubhub and Instacart deliver to the apartments? Grubhub, absolutely. Instacart, I'm not as familiar with. I don't know, Althea, James, if you would know that one.
Grubhub, I believe, delivers, as well as Uber Eats and DoorDash. And if you're looking for specifically, I know Safeway deliveries as well for grocery deliveries. Sometimes the drivers will get confused because it's a difficult campus to navigate. So I'm going to drop a specific address and location that I would recommend you give them. It's the Porter Kresge Circle or Loop, which is in our parking lot, and it's at 411 Porter Kresge Road. So I'll add this in the chat, but that'll probably get you your best results, and your student, if they are able to, would want to walk out to the Porter Loop from the apartments to get best results. Okay, we did not receive or cannot find the link for the Google Doc for move-in signups for Crown. Okay, so we can get you connected to the Crown Housing Office. Unfortunately, we at Porter wouldn't be able to help you specifically with this issue, but we will be able to get you connected to the contact that could help you at Crown.
Do you need help with that address?
Yeah, actually, I
I
was
can-
realizing I thought I knew, but I think
I
you might
can
know
get it.
better.
I can get it. Just give me a second.
Thanks. I was on the Crown directory and I was like,
I can get it here.
thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Are the libraries open? The libraries will be open this fall. I can drop a link in the chat about so that you can get more information about the library timeframes and when they'll be open. But we have two libraries, the
McHenry?
McHenry, I was about to call it the Henry Cowell Library, and I was like, that is not quite right.
Hello, CFO, anybody? Oh, hello.
Hi, I'm in a meeting, please. It's okay, bye-bye. Sorry, that was one of our, so that's a good plug. We have some incredible CSOs here at Porter. They're the campus security officers. So if your student is living here at on campus, they do check-ins around the buildings to make sure everything's safe. So what just happened was a CSO knocked on my door and wanted to make sure everything was good because they're like, why are you here? Okay, sorry about that interruption. I lost my train of thought.
Libraries.
Libraries, and I was
Science-
misnaming the
science
libraries.
library.
Yes, we have the Science and Engineering Library, and then we have the McHenry Library. The McHenry Library is a little bit larger, but they're both incredible libraries, and sometimes Science and Engineering has a better spot or nicer spots to study. So we'll get you that link. Right. And then anyone sticking around, we just want, in case it's getting late for you, this whole recording will be posted on our YouTube page. I'll post that link here where you'll be able to find it, but that's called Porter College Squiggle Broadcasting. And so if you need to head out for tonight and check in tomorrow, we can, that'll be posted within the next 24 hours.
I'm going to also drop in a link to the campus housing webpage that has information about move-in. And it also has a lot of the general information the students are receiving in their letters about COVID mitigation.
Let's see, I see a question. Does the off-campus parking have security? I don't know that. It is not managed by the by UCSC, so you'd need to contact that specific lot and ask them that. Another follow-up question is there transportation to and from campus? Yes, there is. We have students, their student ID card becomes their bus pass, and that gets them on all the Santa Cruz Metro buses. The Santa Cruz Metro buses can take you all around UC Santa Cruz because UC Santa Cruz is kind of like a big loop. So it'll take you all around UC Santa Cruz, and it'll also take you downtown up to Davenport, down south to Watsonville, or to Capitola. So there's a lot of ways that a lot of places you can get to with your bus pass.
And the buses, as Althea said, are prepaid, if you will, as part of the student reg fees, and their reg card acts as their bus pass. The Highway 17 bus, which is also part of the metro, and that runs from Santa Cruz over to San Jose. There is a small fee for that one. I think it's $5 or $7 or something like that. But that is the only Santa Cruz Metro bus that there's a fee that needs to be paid.
And if you happen to be, your student is, you're expecting your student to maybe be flying, you can get to the San Jose Airport, the Oakland Airport, and the SFO International Airport by taking the 17 bus and then connecting to the public transit there, such as Caltrain and BART and the bus system. You can also, it's a more expensive option, but there are also shuttles, airport shuttles, sorry, that word almost evaded me, airport shuttles, and also Uber and Lyft. I did have success taking an Uber and Lyft to and from the San Jose and San Francisco airports within the last month. So just a little tip in case that's something you're concerned about for transportation to and from home for your student. Oh yeah, you just asked that question. Yeah, are there buses to the airports? Not necessarily a direct bus, but you would take, for instance, to the San Jose Airport, you would take a bus to the San Jose, you take the 17 bus from the Metro Center in Santa Cruz across the Highway 17 over to San Jose Diderot Station. I could be mispronouncing that station, so my apologies. And from there, you would take a bus or Caltrain to whichever route is best for you to either airport that you're trying to get to. All right. Does anybody have any burning questions as we are kind of wrapping up tonight? We are still addressing the Q&A right now, but if anybody has anything before we wrap up, and if not, and if something comes up after the session, just know that we will be available via email and we are very happy to answer your questions. And we'll do so as soon as possible.
I just dropped a link in the chat for our TAPS, our Transportation and Parking Services, to their page that offers insight on how to get around to places outside of Santa Cruz.
And we will put an additional card in the slide deck with all of the different links so that you don't have to comb through the chat and all of the answers to find the links.
Yes, this presentation slides and also the recording of this whole meeting will be available tomorrow for you to access as a resource. So that'll be available on our website and also on our YouTube. And if your student is an Instagram user and is spending lots of time on their phone, they're on the Instagram. We have an Instagram at porter.college, and in our link, we post in the link in our bio, which if your student is with you might make a lot of sense. And if they're there to interpret, if not, no worries. In our link in bio, we post a lot of accurate links and important information. So for your student, the Instagram may be a good place to stay abreast of information.
And if you join us there tomorrow, you can help us feed the koi tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, we'd love to have you. We have a lot of awesome parents that join our live stream, and we'll say hi to the fish virtually. And we'll say hi for them too. And we give them food for you, you know. Part of the fun.
We're not excited about our wildlife, are we?
Yeah. Oh,
we in Porter in particular, I think, get really excited about the turkeys and the deer and the raccoons and the koi.
we've got
squirrels.
some. we have some awesome, awesome wildlife on campus.
Yeah.
Very cool ecosystem to be a part of. All right, thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for attending. And we will look forward to seeing you and your students soon. We'll have links, a page of links attached to the recording in case you want to double check that. And of course, just drop us a line. We'll have some contact information there as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And we're excited to meet your students soon and get them all connected with UCSC. Best of luck with, if you're doing move-in, best of luck. If not, I hope it's just a smooth transition into the fall quarter. We're definitely here for you via email and here to answer your questions. Thanks, everybody.
So Althea, I think you have the controls to end the stream.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna just give it 1 second.
Okay.
All right. Kathy, I'm just documenting our Q&A. I'll be sending that to you so that if
Perfect.
we wanted to make a document or put it on our website, you, James, and I could work on that.
That would be great. We probably can utilize the information as we revamp our webpage.
Awesome. Great. I'll make sure I get that over to you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hmm? All right, everybody. We're going to close out the meeting. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have an awesome next few weeks before, or I guess next few days. Oh gosh, this snuck up. We hope you have a good time before move-in and before the school starts. And we're excited for this fall quarter with you and your students. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.